Hello, my name is Vicky and I'm 40 years old. Working was always my dream because I craved independence, and thank God I managed to get it for myself once I entered the working world. Being money savvy and always looking for ways to gain more income and rise on the economic fiscal ladder has been something ingrained in me from a young age. It has been such an important ideology in my household that my mother reaffirmed the importance of being financially stable and independent once I moved out of the house to pursue my dreams as a business analyst. When I first met my husband, Oliver, he was so sweet and kind. Unfortunately, though, I cannot say the same for my in-laws. Honestly, it's a miracle that we got married with all of the hatred I received from my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and mother-in-law. Oliver and I have been married for 10 years. In that time, we've had our ups and downs as couples often do, but lately I've noticed him being a bit colder to me, and I have the suspicion that it's because several months ago, we both got some life-altering news. I remember the day like it was yesterday. Oliver found me in the kitchen just when I got home from work. I was beaming from ear to ear because I got the greatest news ever. Hey, babe. Hey, honey. Whoa, you sound happy. What's got my wife so chipper? Share the good news. Honestly, it's just so surreal. I'm not even sure if I can believe what just happened. Calm down. Don't keep me waiting any longer. Come on, spill the news. Okay, so I just got back from work. And I got a promotion. I started doing the happy dance. To explain further, Oliver and I, throughout our 10 years of marriage, as I'm sure most couples also do, have several inside jokes and behaviors that have come about due to sharing many intimate life experiences. One of those routines, practices, involves a happy dance that we do when we're excited and joyous. We developed this dance at the start of our relationship and we've been using it ever since. We did it at our graduation, at our engagement party, at our wedding, obviously, and when we found out we were pregnant, it was our little cute tradition that we'd always engage in. But for some reason, once I opened my eyes and was disillusioned from my giddiness, I saw that Oliver wasn't doing the happy dance. Confused and a bit sad, I asked, "Why aren't you doing the happy dance?" Oliver sighed. He sounded disgruntled and frustrated. "I'm happy for you, babe, but I also got some work-related news today. I got laid off." His head fell in sadness and what I can assume to be an embarrassment. The silence was deafening. It was so awkward you could cut through the tension in the room with a knife. I genuinely didn't know what to say. I felt awful for my husband, and I'm sure my elation at my good news was like pouring a bucket of salt into an already painful wound. "I'm so sorry, Oliver. This situation is devastating." "Yeah, well, I guess that's just part of life. There was nothing that they could do, so let's do something tonight. Let's go out to Chippy's. Some greasy fast food will make you feel better." Honestly, Vicky, I'm not really in the mood. Thanks for the offer, though. I think I want to be alone for some time. Congratulations, by the way. The days that followed were less awkward, but still uncomfortable nonetheless. I could feel a festering resentment grow between us. Now, it's not rocket science to suspect that Oliver was holding some jealousy and envy in his heart due to the circumstances, which is somewhat understandable because he was in a sensitive state at the time. I would like to point out that Oliver is quite a traditional man. He enjoys the thought of being the only breadwinner and coming home to a wife who was cooking and cleaning all day. Unfortunately, that's not going to fly in this economy. You'd have to be financially stable to actualize such a lifestyle, and unfortunately, we were not within our means to live that way, as we wanted to prioritize our children's education by putting them in private schools. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, such a lifestyle doesn't really appeal to me. After all, I grew up living by the ideology that everyone should work for themselves and make a name for themselves and secure financial freedom. And with this new promotion of mine, I was well on my way to living a very comfortable life. Getting laid off obviously was still a very sore and sensitive subject. So when he would lounge around all day doing nothing, including not doing the housework, And watching documentaries and playing video games all day, I allowed it. A month had gone by and Oliver was still in his funk. He even got several visits from the aforementioned extended family in-laws of whom I wasn't very fond. But considering his sensitive state, I decided to put my pride to the side and allow the snarky and rude comments that were to be thrown at me, just so Oliver could receive some comfort and compassion from his family. "Oh, you poor thing! I hate seeing you like this, big bro." One day, all three of them, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my mother-in-law, visited at the same time, which made me quite uncomfortable and a bit panicked because it meant that I would be receiving not twice, but thrice the amount of negativity permeating my home. "Honestly, I'm so baffled that you got laid off. If anything, I thought that Vicky would be the one losing her job before you ever would. This is so shocking." Come to think of it, women nowadays are more likely to be laid off, right? I mean, makes sense since they'd be at home taking care of the kids and the home, so why would you, of all people, get laid off? Before I could even rebuke Benjamin's stupid ideology, my obnoxiously loud mother-in-law burst in from the kitchen, carrying a tray with some food and drinks to serve her ailing son. I swear you'd think he broke every bone in his whole body with the amount of pampering and coddling he was receiving. "It's such a shame that this has happened. My poor baby. I could just cry. I'm so upset." "It's been tough. I'm not going to die. At least Vicky has been here to support us while everything has been going down." A wife and mother supporting her husband? What has this world gone to? Oh, so that's where Oliver got his outdated philosophies from. "Vicky, I think you should prepare dinner for all of us. We're going to be here for a while." My breath hitched. I had just come home from a very exhausting day at work in which I had to stay for an extra 4 hours to appease my boss. I didn't want to give him the impression that I'd gotten too comfortable, lax, after receiving the promotion, as this could risk possibly getting demoted, or even worse, fired. Having 2 unemployed people in the house was the last thing we needed, so I always did my best to ensure that I was always on top of my game. Unfortunately, this meant that oftentimes I would come home very exhausted, and most days I'd have to cook the meals because Oliver was feeling depressed and would depend on me to satisfy him. Sometimes on particularly hectic days at work, I would like to come home and eat something that had already been prepared for me. So I would ask Oliver very kindly and sensitively as to not make him upset if he could prepare dinner for me when I was approximately an hour from finishing work, so that once I got home, I could eat a meal and go to bed and begin the slave work tomorrow, at least in better spirits. He would oftentimes refuse, and as much as I was irritated, I would let it slide. But sometimes I wouldn't let it slide, and I'd plead with him, and in those moments he would begrudgingly make dinner, and he would always make it in poor quality, which is surprising because before the news of his being laid off, he was the better cook between the both of us. Needless to say, I was not in the mood to cook, especially for such a large group of people, as I was always used to making dinner for 2, since it was just Oliver and me in the household. Thank God my kids were staying with friends, and so we didn't need to worry too much about prepping dinner for them as well. Actually, I'm feeling quite sore and tired from working recently. Is it okay if we order some food instead? I know a great restaurant that serves great pasta. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law gasped quite dramatically, and my brother-in-law just shook his head. Oliver remained unresponsive. "How dare you, Vicky? Honestly, I'm so disgusted right now. We're your guests. I mean, we barely come over here because you never invite us, and this is how you treat us? My mother just asked for a nice home-cooked meal. The least you could do is serve us." "Yes, sis. I gotta say, I'm a bit disappointed that you'd say something like that. It doesn't have to be a 7-course meal. Plus, I'm not in the mood for pasta." I swear to God, this younger generation is poisoning even us adults. How could you even ask such a question, Vicky? We get it. You're employed and you're very busy and you're tired, but can't you see your husband is upset? Can't you do this one thing for him? You're his wife, for God's sakes. You're supposed to do the cooking anyways. I was so overwhelmed by all of the barking and yelling that to try and de-escalate the situation, I said this. Look, I get that you guys feel that you are guests, even though you're quite literally family and not random strangers. I'm trying to impress. But anyways, as I mentioned before, I am quite tired. But since you all feel so strongly about it, I will make the dinner, and I apologize for making that suggestion. Please bear with me. Making dinner might take some time because I'm just so exhausted, but I will do it. As I got up to go and make the wretched dinner for my ungrateful in-laws, I heard Oliver speak up in what seemed to be a while, and what he said, honestly, shocked me. She's been forcing me to make dinner. As if the dramatic gasp I heard moments ago wasn't enough, I swear, even with my back turned, I sensed both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law clutching their pearls as they let out an even larger gasp than before. And surely enough, when I turned around, my spidey senses turned out to be correct. Additionally, Benjamin, in addition to shaking his head even more vigorously this time, had a visible look of disgust that was pointed towards me. She did what? Are you out of your mind, Vicky? How selfish could you be? Maybe I'm the bad guy in this story. No? Well, I'll tell you, at that moment it certainly started to feel that way. I was attacked for several minutes by some very angry in-laws who called me selfish and evil for forcing my husband to make dinner every once in a while. Might I add, it wasn't like I made him do it every day. On the days when I was particularly extremely exhausted and on the verge of passing out on the couch. I'm sorry, Vicky. I'm not trying to make you look bad, but I just think it's unfair for you to burden me with household labor as if I'm the wife in this situation. I mean, the roles are supposed to be swapped, if I'm being honest. It's just not fair. I noted the crack in his voice towards the end of his monologue, and immediately I softened. My poor husband was indeed going through a lot of angst and turmoil. I know depression is a real thing. I know people can't get out of bed most days, and maybe he was just so debilitated that he couldn't do anything. So I just decided to bite my tongue and lend a compassionate ear to the situation. I'm so sorry, Oliver. I am. Okay, from now on, you don't have to make dinner. I'll do everything. I went into the kitchen and made dinner. Once it was ready and served, I ate in silence as Oliver, Hannah, Benjamin, and Lillian ate and chatted the night away. They appeared to have a grand old time, not once involving me in the conversation or even asking if I was okay, since I was mute ever since the embarrassing and, frankly, quite unfair argument that took place. I guess they still believed that I was the one at fault for everything. I was mostly upset with what Oliver said. I was used to my in-laws treating me that way, but Oliver? Honestly, I was very surprised. Nonetheless, I let my pride go, and after that day, I was the only one cooking and cleaning, which added to my stress and exhaustion. Another month went by, and I was continuing to hold down the fort. Being the sole provider was quite all right in this circumstance, since my promotion came with a bonus and a slight pay increase, but I knew that it couldn't be like this forever. Regardless of my growing worry, I let Oliver continue to revel in his miserableness a bit because, well, I felt like he was allowed to feel upset about the whole ordeal. Thank God we were fortunate enough that he had the privilege of laying around the house and nursing his broken heart, as other people in desperate financial situations don't have the luxury of moping around all day. Some people need to start looking for work immediately after being laid off, fired, because they don't have the financial security to sustain themselves and their families. This went on for an additional 2 months, and I noticed the household funds steadily decreasing. As much as I initially thought that I'd be able to sustain the household for some time, I started to notice that this couldn't be kept up for long. And if we wanted to keep our daughters in private school, Oliver needed to get a job ASAP. I sat down one day and informed him of this. Oliver had now been speaking to me very brashly and curtly, giving me attitude like a disgruntled child after not getting what they want. I think it's time you start looking for work. Our lives can't be sustained if we keep spending like this, but only relying on one source of income. But I thought you have a job, and you got a promotion, remember? Do you remember how you're making more money than me because I'm jobless? Yes, Oliver, I understand you're still hurting, but we need to consider this. Consider our daughters. Private school is very expensive. Don't you think I know that? God, you can be so stupid at times. His voice began to soften once he saw my eyes turning red and my face turning puffy. I was just so exhausted from everything. I was tired of throwing this man a pity party, and it was emotionally tolling me as well. Hey, look, don't cry now. I'm sorry, Vicky. You know I've been feeling stressed because of this situation. I know that, babe, but we need to do something, or else our children will suffer. You're right. I'll start looking tomorrow. Actually, you don't need to start looking for anything because I think I might be able to get you a job at my workplace. Yes, folks, you heard that right. I was the one who got him the job at my workplace because I was networking with people and working so diligently, as well as getting into good favor with my new boss. I managed to pull some strings to see if Oliver could work with me. We both worked in the same field, but opted to work in different companies just so that we avoided adding a new dynamic of potential stress that could ruin our relationship. We both liked the idea of working separately as it promoted our individuality as people and not as husband and wife. But considering our circumstances, I saw that there was much little choice. And at the time I thought, how bad could it be? Quite bad, it turns out, as what I'm about to tell you will shock you. A few more months had gone by and Oliver was making great progress in the company, but what he told me after working there for only a couple of months almost made my jaw hit the floor. So, babe, I just wanted to let you know that I've invited Mom, Hannah, and Ben over for dinner as I have very important news I need to share with everyone. Please, could you make dinner and ensure that it's going to be good because this news is very exciting. Oliver began to do the happy dance, and I joined in, celebrating with him even though I didn't know what was going on. I prepared the dinner as was instructed and welcomed the guests into our home once they arrived. As some small talk was made during the onset of dinner, Oliver interrupted all the mini conversations. As you know, I've gathered you all here today to share some very exciting news. I would like to let you know that... Drum roll, please. Benjamin and Hannah abruptly drummed their hands on the table. We were all on the edges of our seats as we awaited the news. I got a promotion! Everyone immediately burst with joy and excitement, dancing around the table and celebrating this accomplishment. I'll admit, I was a bit surprised that he got a promotion so quickly, despite barely being here for a year, but I was too excited at the time to care. I was just so happy. He finally appeared to be out of his funk. He even looked better, like he was taking better care of himself, and that's all that mattered. Hold on, everyone. I don't think Oliver is finished with his news. Go on, Ollie, tell them the rest. A little bit of hesitation cropped up when he said, Vicky, here you go. He handed me what appeared to be a hotel key card. I was confused, but then I got an idea. Oh, babe, did you get us a hotel room to celebrate? How thoughtful of you. This is nice. Honestly, I think I needed something like this. I've been so stressed and exhausted. No, it's not a hotel room for us. It's a hotel room for you. I was obviously confused, and at that moment, I noted that the rest of the in-laws weren't confused as well. If anything, they looked somewhat pleased, as if they had accomplished arranging all the dominoes in place and were waiting for the last domino to fall. I'm confused. What's going on? So Oliver had approached us some time ago, and he told us all about his new job and how he was thriving, and we, mainly Hannah. Yes, I suggested because of his upcoming success and the increased bonuses he's been receiving, he should contemplate his life choices and decisions because we really didn't like what you said all those months ago when we came here last time. What are you talking about, Hannah? Well, we just suggested and subsequently concluded that you two needed to go on a break because we feel like you've been abusing him and he deserves some peace for the time being, especially since he's making good money now. He no longer needs to depend on you as much. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Never in my life has my heart felt so much pain and my mind felt so much confusion. I was completely at a loss for words. This man, my husband, the person I've been married to for the past 10 years, has decided to treat me like this? All because his sick and evil family so badly wants to make my life miserable? I looked at Oliver with a face so full of hatred and rage that it made him bow his head in disappointment. Whoa, okay, let me clear the air. It didn't exactly go like that. We just thought that you two need some space from each other because we know that you've both been going through some stress. And since Oliver is now the breadwinner, we thought it made the most sense to put you in a hotel for the time being. So you're kicking me out? You're kicking me out of my own house, the house that we paid for together? Oh, don't start that equal rights nonsense, Vicky. You know that your husband is the head of the house. It doesn't matter if you paid for it together. He's still the head of the household, and he still makes the decisions. Here, I'll help you pack your bags. He needs to be in his own space right now and appreciate the lifestyle he has created for himself. I was livid. I saw red. I simply couldn't understand how people got the gall to treat other people this way. I knew my in-laws hated me, but I didn't know the extent of their anger, and that night as I tried not to cry and yell and scream and, frankly, set the house on fire, I saw the amusement painted all over my in-laws' faces, with my husband looking somewhat sheepish and only ever so slightly embarrassed, as if he made a silly mistake on an exam and not just broken his wife's heart. I stomped up to my room without saying a word, packed a bag of my belongings, and drove to my best friend's house to stay the night. I spent the whole night sobbing and wondering what I did to deserve this treatment. Because of my go-getter attitude and hard-headedness, my sadness quickly turned to anger. And that anger turned into me plotting for my revenge. Despite being exhausted and drained from months of breaking my back and dealing with emotional abuse, I somehow found the energy to do some digging regarding how quickly my husband got these apparent bonuses that I knew nothing about. I decided to call in sick the next day so that I could do some digging. Once my husband was out of the house, I returned home to do some investigative work. Because we worked at the same company, I knew his working hours and I acted accordingly. Once I arrived home, I went straight to his office to start my sleuthing. After a couple of hours, I found some shocking evidence. It turns out that he had been embezzling money from the company. He had somehow found a way to be siphoning funds from the company, and not only that, he was in cahoots with the new boss that I mentioned earlier. I stared at his computer screen for a solid 10 minutes, simply refusing to believe what my eyes were telling me. His connections with the boss are probably what enabled him to get away with his actions. I gathered as much information as I could into a pen drive. I collected all of the emails, documents, and other information and inconsistencies in the company's spending that could be used against him. I then went to my room and collected some more of my things, a significant number of things, because I knew that I would not be back, not for a long while at least. Once I got back to my best friend's house, I began to compile all of the information into a PowerPoint presentation because I was about to ruin this man's life. Once I was finished, I emailed my boss and attached several other emails, especially individuals who were higher-ups and those associated with HR, to inform them that there is some important news that needs to be shared, and an emergency meeting needs to take place ASAP to discuss the discoveries I made. I made the email vague but interesting enough so that they'd allow an emergency email to be held on such short notice. In a separate email, I emailed my husband and told him that there was an emergency meeting he needed to attend concerning some plans for the upcoming fiscal year. Both my superiors and my husband aptly responded, and thankfully they were all available to be in the meeting. The next day came about, and I was very giddy and excited about what was about to go down. I ensured to wear my best suit and look my absolute best for what was about to happen, as it was going to be completely iconic and legendary. I made my way to the meeting room, seeing that most of the individuals were already seated. All that was left was my slimy husband and my slimy boss. They came in, and for a brief moment they looked somewhat panicked, as they noticed that a lot of important people were in the room. Perhaps it was their guilty conscience telling them of their misdeeds? Anyways, I began the meeting. I laid out all of the information and presented it so clearly, adding more heat as the presentation went on. Everyone in the room was completely astonished, and my boss and Oliver turned red and began to panic, as everyone's eyes were turned on them in hatred and disgust. One of my superiors even said that they'd rot in jail for all of their embezzling. At one point, Oliver was sending me daggers through his eyes, but I returned the same look of hatred and disgust and began to twist the knife even more, getting him where it hurts. He stood up. "Just what do you think you're doing, you wretched little gremlin? She's lying to everyone. Don't believe a word she says. I'll sue you for slander. I'll sue you and get a divorce, and I'll ruin you." The husband I married all those years ago was completely gone. What was standing right in front of me right now was a full-blown monster. He attempted to leave, but luckily I secretly called for security in advance to be stationed at the door because I had informed them of the information I found. Oliver was embarrassed when he was greeted by two burly men standing at the door, preventing his escape. My slimy boss, who was in on all of the illegal activities, began to sob, muttering about how his life is ruined, while Oliver continued to embarrass himself by trying to push past the big strong men. I spent a good 30 minutes relaying to everyone all of the information I found, and once I was finished, both men looked defeated. You can probably imagine what came next. Well, just in case you can't, both Oliver and my boss were promptly fired and charged with embezzling the company's funds for their selfish gain. They were escorted out of the premises, but not without being swarmed by a media frenzy. Oh, did I forget to mention that I also contacted news outlets and tabloids to be ready to catch the looks of horror and embarrassment plastered all over Oliver's face? Well, I did, and it felt so good. Seeing his face plastered all over the front page of the local newspaper the next morning made me feel happy. He deserved it after the way he treated me. He's currently in jail trying to make bail, but there's also been some investigations and assumptions that Benjamin, my brother-in-law, might have also been part of the scheme. With this newfound information, I had to get some more, and so I discovered that Benjamin, who works in IT, was indeed helping Oliver and my boss with all of the embezzling. To add insult to injury, it appears as though my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were all also part of the scheme. It was now all coming together and making sense. That's the reason why my in-laws and husband kicked me out of the house. They were trying to get rid of me so that they can continue in their criminal ways. So far, there have been speculations that Benjamin will join Oliver in prison, and I'm sure that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are panicking because they are also going to be found out soon. These past couple of months have been the craziest of my life. But I am so grateful that I managed to discover this harrowing information in good time before things could get worse. I think it goes without saying that my good deeds did not go unnoticed. Not only did I expose my awful husband and his awful family, but I was also approached by my superiors. They reviewed my work file and all of my accolades and achievements and decided to promote me. Not only did they promote me, but they made me take my old boss's position. I start work next week. The new position comes with an even bigger bonus as well as an even higher pay raise. I am so excited to begin. And yes, I am beginning to process the divorce papers because I'm obviously not going to be associated with a man who's a criminal. I imagine that getting custody of the kids will be easy on my part. For one, I am their mother. I'm also making a lot of money, and I am not a criminal who embezzles funds and abuses the trust and care of other people. I am so excited and happy about this new journey that I'm about to embark on. I think everyone in the end got what they deserved.